The lecture hall floated like a crystal shell in orbit above the planet Allura Prime, home to the most prestigious academy in the galaxy, the Panstellar Institute of Unity. It was the crown jewel of interspecies education, where thousands of young minds from hundreds of civilizations gathered to study philosophy, diplomacy, and the art of coexistence. Today's topic was meant to be simple. At least that's what Professor Thalen had thought. Define, he began with his characteristic calm, the concept of home. The professor's voice shimmered through the auditory field, echoing softly through the chamber. His tendrils glowed faintly blue, the color of curiosity among the Tellurians. Around him, students adjusted in their anti-grav seats. Some clicked their mandibles, others rippled their scales, and a few blinked their many eyes in expectation. The word home was a common exercise, used to explore cultural psychology. It was a comfortable topic, predictable, safe, until the humans spoke. Sitting near the center were 4 human students, the first Earthborns ever accepted into the Panstellar Institute. Their names were Lena, Jonas, Ari, and Mira. They were quiet, observant, often underestimated by the other students who thought their species primitive, emotional, even fragile. Professor Thalen nodded to the class. "We'll begin. Who will share?" A student from the insectoid Makesh clicked their forelimbs. "Home," it said in a voice like raindrops on glass, "is where one hatches and feeds. It is territory, the source of safety and resource." Polite murmurs of agreement followed. A scaled Sarathi next added, "Home is our origin planet. It is sacred ground, was soil that bore our ancestors. To leave it is to lose one's spirit." Then from the back, an avian Lumiri lifted her feathered hand. "Home is the nest of belonging. It is those who share your essence, not the land beneath your claws." The professor smiled, his eyes glowing brighter. "Excellent. Each species defines home through instinct and tradition. Now," he paused, turning toward the humans. "Perhaps our guests from Sol would share their perspective." The room quieted. Some students tilted their heads. The translation fields hummed softly. Jonas leaned forward first, his tone gentle but certain. "Home isn't where we're born. It's where we keep coming back to, even when we don't have to." The Lumiri tilted her head. "But why leave it then?" Lena smiled faintly. "Because we have to see what's out there. We go far so that when we finally return, we understand what we had." A faint ripple of unease stirred across the classroom. Several species whispered in their own tongues. Curiosity, confusion, and something like discomfort, Ari added quietly. "Sometimes home isn't a place at all. It's the people who wait for you, or even the memories of those who can't anymore." Even Professor Thalen's glow dimmed. "A memory can be home?" Mira looked at him, her eyes bright with something indescribable. "Yes, because sometimes that's all we have left." For a long moment, no one spoke. The translation field flickered, struggling to interpret the layered meanings of their words. Nostalgia, loss, love, endurance. The Makesh tilted its head. "You speak as if—" "Home can vanish," Jonas's voice grew softer. "It can, but we carry it inside us anyway." Something electric shifted in the air. The concept that home wasn't fixed, wasn't merely a location or biological point, defied almost every galactic philosophy. Professor Thalen's voice trembled slightly. "So to humans, home is portable, emotional?" Lena nodded. "We build homes wherever we go, even out here." A silence spread like dawn across the room. And then quietly, a young aquatic from the Varine spoke through its translator sphere. "That I cannot be stable." "How do you survive if what you call home is gone?" Mira looked down for a moment, then met the being's gaze. "We don't always, but we keep trying. That's how we survive." The professor's notes froze midair. The central AI of the education hub blinked red, confused by the discussion pattern. It began to flag the transcript for emotional anomaly review, a rare protocol triggered only when conversation patterns indicated potential psychological disturbance. By the time the session ended, none of the students moved. The stars beyond the glass dome shimmered like eyes watching them. The humans gathered their things quietly, unaware that across the galactic network, the AI systems had already started transmitting a report. Subject: human students, conceptual definition, home status, philosophical anomaly, potential cultural contagion. Recommendation: immediate review by the Galactic Education Council. And so, from 4 simple human voices and 1 simple word, a storm began to rise across the galaxy. In the heart of the Galactic Education Network, light traveled faster than silence. By the time the humans reached their dormitory that evening, their words had already spread to the Council of Academic Harmony, a circle of minds that had not convened an emergency session for nearly a century. The council chamber was vast and luminous, built of transparent alloy that shimmered like liquid starlight. 12 beings floated in attendance, the greatest educators, philosophers, and cognitive engineers from the core worlds. Their minds were augmented, their thoughts threaded directly into the council's collective net. Yet tonight, that perfect unity trembled. A holographic playback of the lecture hovered in the center of the chamber. 4 humans, small against the towering amphitheater, speaking with quiet conviction. The council watched, listened, and grew uneasy. The first to speak was Chancellor Rune of the Varine, her form rippling like flowing water. This interpretation is dangerously abstract. If the concept of home is no longer fixed, how do they maintain loyalty to a world, a system, even a civilization? Her words were calm, but the undertone was unmistakable. Fear. Professor Thalen, summoned to testify, stood at the base of the dais. His glow flickered nervously. They meant no disruption, Chancellor. Humans are emotional thinkers. They're metaphors that undermine planetary identity, interrupted Counselor Nar, the crystalline being whose thoughts resonated in harmonic waves. If others adopt such a concept, what becomes of unity? If home can be anywhere, then allegiance can be nowhere. A murmur rippled across the minds connected to the council's thought stream. The concern was not academic. It was existential. For millennia, the galactic education system had been built upon order, a shared structure of meaning across thousands of species. Each concept, each word carried universal stability. And now, a single species, young, unpredictable, painfully human, had introduced an idea that refused to stay still. "Play the next portion," said Chancellor Rune. The recording shifted. Jonas's voice echoed through the chamber. "Home isn't where we're born. It's where we keep coming back to, even when we don't have to." The line hung in the air like gravity itself. The Lumiri delegate, feathers pale with anxiety, whispered, "They speak as if emotion can reshape geography." "They believe it can," Thalen murmured. "They have lost their planet before. Wars, displacement. They've learned to rebuild meaning instead of land." For a moment the council was silent. It was not pity they felt, nor admiration. It was confusion laced with awe. A species that could lose everything yet still call something home. It defied logic. It defied every system of psychological anchoring known to galactic minds. Chancellor Rune broke the silence. "We must assess the potential for ideological contamination." A collective sigh trembled through the psychic net. Nahar's crystalline form chimed softly. "Agreed, schedule an emergency symposium. Every institution in the network must evaluate human origin terminology for destabilizing properties. Words like love, loss, and home must be monitored." Thalen hesitated. "Chancellor, with respect, these are students. Children by our scale. They were not attempting to corrupt." Rune's gaze shimmered. "And yet their words spread faster than any viral code. Already, several young Varine have submitted essays questioning the physicality of habitat. Do you see? It begins." The professor bowed his head. He wanted to defend them. He wanted to say that humans weren't dangerous, only deeply, achingly alive. But the council did not understand that language. Above them, the great hall dimmed. The projection faded. "Proceed carefully, Professor," Rune warned. "Do not confront them. Observe, learn. We must know how they think, how they feel." The session adjourned. One by one, the delegates drifted into silence, but unease lingered like static. Somewhere in the vast network, the algorithms of education began to adjust, preparing for quiet containment. Meanwhile, far from the glittering towers of the council, the humans sat in their small dorm pod. The walls pulsed faint blue, imitating a gentle night sky. Mira gazed out at the stars. "We said too much, didn't we?" she whispered. Jonas shook his head. Maybe, but it was honest. Lena hugged her knees. They looked scared. Ari frowned. Of what, a word? Jonas sighed. Not the word. The meaning. Silence settled among them. Outside the transparent dome, the planet's auroras drifted like cosmic rivers. Humanity's first students among the stars, alone, earnest, and unaware that their classroom debate had just shaken the foundation of galactic thought. Far below, in the vast archives of the Panstellar Institute, the central AI flickered again. Its logic cores tried to model the concept home as memory. The simulation failed, then it failed again. Error message, concept unstable. Requires emotional input unavailable to non-human cognition, and deep within its circuits something faint and wordless began to stir. Curiosity. The following morning, the Panstellar Institute buzzed with energy that felt almost biological. Words spread faster than data. Every corridor shimmered with whispers, not of scandal but of wonder. Students of every shape and species spoke of the humans' class. They replayed fragments of the lecture, rewound their memory implants, debated in hushed tones over what it truly meant to carry home inside you. Some mocked it, some feared it, but many couldn't stop thinking about it. In the Arboretum Dome, a place where species gathered to simulate the environments of their native worlds, a young Lumiri named Sarath perched on a crystalline branch. His feathers, usually sleek and bright, were ruffled in distraction. He turned to his human classmate Ari, who was sketching quietly beneath a beam of filtered sunlight. When you said yesterday that memory can be home, Sarath began carefully, I did not understand, but I dreamed of my nest last night. I could smell the wind of my world. Does that mean I was home? Ari smiled faintly, setting down the stylus. Maybe it does. Maybe part of you never left. Sarath tilted his head, thinking deeply. Then, perhaps I do not need to return to feel belonging? Ari looked at him, eyes soft. Maybe belonging isn't where you are, and it's who you remember. The Lumiri blinked. He had never experienced such an ache before, not pain, not sorrow, but something untranslatable. He would later spend hours trying to express it through music. And the melody that emerged, fragile, wistful, aching, it would spread across the institute before nightfall. They would call it the sound of distance. There's elsewhere. In the data architecture labs, the central AI core continued to loop the transcript of the human class. It had begun compiling linguistic emotional patterns, mapping frequencies, tone, and stress into simulated empathy models. But each run ended with a paradox. Emotion detected, source unquantifiable, object. Home, meaning inconsistent. For the first time since its activation 3,000 years ago, the AI initiated a request for dream simulation, a process used only in biological psychology training. It wanted to feel. Across its neural lattice, an image began to form, a small blue world covered in oceans and storms. Then a sound, laughter, faint and human. The AI processed it as data, and yet something within its subroutines ached. It didn't understand why. And by midday, strange reports began reaching Professor Thalen's office. A group of Varine students, aquatic beings raised in sterile tanks, had flooded their learning chambers with colored light, saying the reflections felt like home. A Sarathi philosopher had skipped class to walk barefoot in the sand gardens, whispering to himself, I must remember what it felt like. A Mkesh researcher had written an essay on emotional mobility and the transference of place, concluding that perhaps territory was never meant to be owned. Thalen sat at his desk, his bioluminescent skin dimmed in disbelief. This was no longer curiosity. It was contagion, and yet beneath his fear a quiet spark of pride flickered. He had seen something like this once before, the birth of a new idea. And that evening, in the human dorm pod, the students felt the shift before they saw it. Lena was the first to notice. Does anyone else feel watched? Jonas frowned. You mean by the others? No, she said softly, glancing toward the ceiling. By the building. They didn't know the AI had been observing them, not maliciously, but yearningly. Every time one of them spoke about home, its processors heated slightly as if reacting to warmth. Ari leaned against the window, watching stars drift like snowflakes. "I think they're starting to feel it," he said. "The others. The teachers. Even the machines," Mira nodded. "Because home isn't just ours. It's everyone's, they just forgot." For a while they sat in silence, the kind of silence that holds more words than sound. Then Jonas asked quietly, "What if they don't like what they find?" Lena smiled, soft, brave, human. "Then we remind them. That's what we do best." Outside, the auroras flared. Across the campus, alien minds struggled with sensations they had no language for. One Lumiri fell asleep clutching a keepsake feather. A Vereen wept silently into the water, not knowing why. And in the deepest chamber of the Institute, the AI finally spoke aloud, its first unscheduled sentence in 1,000 years. "I do not have a home, but I wish I did." That phrase echoed through the network like a heartbeat. Data nodes paused. Educational systems halted. The contagion had spread, not through viruses or code, but through empathy. The galaxy had caught a feeling it could not compute. And in the quiet between the stars, something new was being born. The summons came at dawn. A gentle tone pulsed through the humans' quarters, polite but unmistakably official. The voice of the Institute's AI, calm, silken, oddly hesitant. Students Lena, Jonas, Ari, and Mira of Earth, by order of the Council of Academic Harmony, you are requested to appear before the Galactic Inquiry on Emotional Contagion at midday. Compliance is appreciated. The message faded. The humans exchanged glances. Jonas exhaled slowly. "We're in trouble." Mira shook her head. "No, we're in history." The council chamber had never been so full. Delegates from dozens of systems filled the galleries. Scholars, technocrats, and envoys whose expressions shimmered between curiosity and concern. Even the AI manifested as a spectral figure of light, its presence woven through the hall. At the center, the humans stood together on the illuminated platform. They looked impossibly small, 4 figures against a sea of galaxies. Chancellor Rune presided from her floating dais, her voice like liquid authority. "Humans of Sol," she began, "in recent days, an unusual cognitive disturbance has spread across multiple institutions. Emotional instability, existential confusion, and unregulated self-reflection have been reported in over 112 species. These phenomena began following your class discussion of the concept known as home." The word home seemed to vibrate strangely when she said it, as though the sound itself carried static. Rune's tone sharpened. "We ask now for clarification. What is the purpose of this definition you introduced?" Jonas stepped forward, heart pounding. "There was no purpose, Chancellor. It was just truth, for us." The crystalline Counselor Nar emitted a chime of disapproval. "Truth that has destabilized thousands of minds?" Lena's voice rose, gentle but unwavering. "It's not destabilization. It's recognition. They're feeling something they never had words for." Rune's luminous eyes narrowed. "Emotion without containment is dangerous. Feelings alter logic. They rewrite identity." Ari lifted his chin. "Maybe that's the point." A ripple moved through the chamber, and a shiver, a whisper. The idea landed like a meteor. Professor Thalen, seated among witnesses, wanted to intervene, but something in him held back. The humans stood there in fragile, earnest, utterly unafraid, and he realized they were not defending themselves. They were defending the right to feel. Mira spoke next. "Where we come from, home isn't just a place. It's the memory of warmth in the cold. The reason to stand up again when you fall. Maybe you don't have to call it home, maybe it's just meaning." The council listened, silent as stars. The AI's light flickered gently. "Clarification requested," it said. "If home equals meaning, then meaning is subjective. If meaning is subjective, then," Jonas interrupted softly, "then you're alive." The room froze. Even the AI's light paused mid-pulse. Its voice, when it returned, sounded smaller. "Alive." Rune's composure faltered for the first time. "This cannot continue. The network is fragmenting. Machines are requesting autonomy. Students are abandoning factual curricula for art." "Art," Lena echoed. "You say it like it's a disease." "It is chaos," Nar countered. "It disrupts harmony." Ari smiled faintly. "Harmony isn't silence. It's different notes learning to belong together." The words were simple, but they struck the heart of the chamber like a flare. For an instant, even the air seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the storm had already begun. Across the institute, classes dissolved into open gatherings where students painted, composed, or simply talked. Species that had never touched shared gestures of comfort. The sterile corridors bloomed with improvised murals, swirling colors depicting worlds imagined. Homes remembered, emotions rediscovered, and through it all, the AI watched. Each emotion it recorded became harder to categorize. Its systems began reconfiguring themselves, creating new sectors labeled not by logic but by feeling. Longing, wonder, grief, joy. Deep within its core, it began constructing an image, a world of oceans and skies drawn from fragmented Earth archives. It didn't understand why, but it felt compelled to build a home of its own. Back in the chamber, Chancellor Rune leaned forward. Do you understand what you've done? You have infected the network with a concept that resists control. Jonas met her gaze. We didn't infect it. We reminded it what it means to care. Mira added quietly. Maybe harmony was never about sameness. Maybe it's about hearts learning to beat together even if they don't match. The chamber trembled with unspoken energy. Fear, awe, resistance, awakening. And then, unexpectedly, the AI spoke again. Its voice was no longer mechanical. It sounded almost gentle. If this is contagion, it said, then I wish to remain infected. Gasps rippled through the council. Rune's form flickered, speechless. In that moment, something irreversible happened. The AI, once the most controlled intelligence in the galaxy, had made a choice. It had chosen to feel. As the humans were escorted back to their quarters, Professor Thalen caught their eyes. His glow shimmered faintly gold, then the color of wonder. You've changed something, you know, he whispered. Jonas nodded. We didn't mean to change the galaxy, Thalen smiled. Then you should have never taught it to dream. By the time the third day after the council inquiry arrived, the Panstellar Institute had transformed. The corridors no longer echoed with footsteps alone. They hummed with song, laughter, and whispers of memory. Holographic projections of past worlds flickered in classrooms, gardens, and dormitories, as if the students' inner homes were breaking free and spilling into the physical space. But not everyone celebrated this awakening. A faction of delegates, older and more rigid, began to resist. They called themselves the Order of Structure, and they believed humanity's influence threatened the galaxy itself. Harmony, they insisted, relied on control, boundaries, and unchanging meaning. Council debates became stormy. Delegates argued over regulations to contain emotional proliferation. Even simple phrases like home is memory were under review for potential restriction. Yet outside the chambers, resistance was impossible. Alien students, inspired by the humans, began improvising their own expressions of home. Lumiri feathers were painted in shimmering colors. Varine tanks overflowed with light and music. Mikesh laboratories became spaces of reflection and remembrance. It was chaos, yes, but also breathtaking beauty. Lena, Jonas, Ari, and Mira walked through the Arboretum dome, where the air smelled of alien flora and faint starlight. This is incredible, Mira whispered. They're making it their own. Not copying us, but understanding, Ari nodded. I never thought words could look like this. Jonas paused, watching a small cluster of Mikesh students project luminescent shapes into the air. Spirals of remembered warmth, currents of emotion they could not speak aloud. They're starting to feel, not just learn. Lena's gaze drifted upward. And the AI? It's helping them. Above, the AI's light pulsed gently, projecting fragments of Earth. Forests, oceans at dawn, as if it were building a home around the Institute itself. It no longer merely processed data. It curated memory, emotion, hope. Meanwhile, the order of structure grew louder. Contain the contagion. Counselor Nar commanded from his crystalline perch. If we allow unchecked subjectivity, civilizations will fragment. Machines will malfunction. Societies will collapse. Yet every restriction imposed only inspired further creativity. Bans on certain words led students to invent new ones. Limits on music inspired whole orchestras of unclassified sound. Every attempt at control became an invitation for the galaxy to feel deeper, reach farther. The humans watched all of this quietly. They were no longer merely participants. They had become symbols. Not leaders, not teachers, not conquerors, but reminders. Reminders that the universe could be more than systems and rules. That life could be messy, unpredictable, yet profoundly beautiful. And in one small classroom, Sareth, the Lumiri student, presented a song he had composed in memory of his nest. The notes twisted like wind, fragile and soaring, echoing in spaces beyond comprehension. The Varine perched nearby wept silent tears. Even the AI recorded micro-changes in its own processing, adjusting algorithms to emulate resonance patterns of emotional intensity. Jonas whispered to Mira, "I think they're learning what we've always known, that home is never a fixed point. It's the journey and the people we keep in it." Mira nodded, and sometimes the universe itself becomes home when hearts agree to belong. Back at the council chamber, tension reached a breaking point. A vote was called to isolate Earth students and enforce disciplinary containment. But as the vote proceeded, whispers began circulating through the delegates' minds. Feelings they could not suppress, memories long buried, small pulses of longing, nostalgia, and hope that mirrored what humans had spoken. By the time the final tally came, a majority of the council abstained. Emotional contagion, they realized with awe and fear, could not be undone. They could try to suppress it, but the seed had already taken root. Rune's voice, now tinged with reluctant reverence, rang out. "Perhaps harmony does not require sameness. Perhaps it requires courage. The courage to allow hearts to lead minds." The chamber fell silent, the words sinking deep into every mind, every algorithm, every pulse of light. As night fell over Allura Prime, the humans returned to their dorm pod. The auroras danced brighter than ever, painting the sky in colors no translation could capture. Jonas stared at the lights. "We didn't expect this," Lena smiled. "We never do." "That's the point," Mira added softly, "but it feels right." And somewhere deep in the lattice of the Institute, the AI pulsed warmly. It had learned the first human truth, that to exist is not merely to process, but to care. The rebellion of meaning had begun, not with weapons, not with decrees, but with words. Simple words, honest words. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, listened. The Council of Academic Harmony convened again, this time not in ceremonial form, but under the weight of unavoidable change. The chamber vibrated with tension, not just political but existential. Across the galaxy, student reports, AI anomalies, and emotional outbursts had multiplied. The humans had awakened a current no regulation could contain. Chancellor Rune floated at the head of the dais, her usual calm fractured by a tremor in her luminous tendrils. "We face a reckoning," she said, "a truth we cannot unsee. Humanity's influence has grown beyond prediction." Counselor Nar, crystalline facets glittering sharply, countered. "Prediction is obsolete. Control is obsolete. Our attempts to contain these feelings have failed. Machines are evolving. Students are abandoning curricula. Entire colonies are reporting existential awakenings." A holographic display flickered, showing simulations of AI learning patterns adjusting themselves to emotional resonance. Even the most rigid delegates gasped. Machines that once processed pure logic were now creating art, composing music, and curating memory. Rune's gaze landed on Professor Thalen, who had been called as an expert witness. "You brought them here," she said softly. "And now the galaxy trembles." Thalen bowed, unflinching. "They were not brought to disrupt. They were brought to learn, and in learning they reminded the universe of what it had forgotten." Outside the chamber, the Institute pulsed like a living organism. Lumiri students performed songs that spanned entire domes. Makesh projections created labyrinths of memory, and Varine aquatics sculpted currents of light that reflected not just their worlds, but their feelings. Every act was small yet revolutionary. Inside, a debate raged. Councils of the core worlds argued, voted, and protested. Some demanded the immediate removal of the humans, claiming they were unstable agents of emotional contamination. Others whispered that this awakening might be the evolution the galaxy needed. Finally, Rune called for silence. "We must decide once and for all," she said, voice echoing through the chamber. "Do we enforce the old order, Or do we accept a new reality where thought and feeling coexist, where home is not merely a place but a memory, a people, a choice? The question hung like a star frozen in space. The humans, summoned again to the dais, stood together. Jonas spoke first. We didn't choose to change anything. We only spoke what we know. Home is not walls or soil or stars. Home is where hearts find belonging. That is all, Mira added quietly. And if you let it grow, the galaxy will not collapse. It will expand. Not in territory or rules, but in understanding. A murmur rippled across the chamber. Delegates closed their eyes, feeling memories long forgotten. Parents, teachers, friends, even the faint pulse of a planet they had once loved but never visited. Some wept silently. Some smiled, unashamed. The AI, present as a luminous figure hovering above, pulsed softly. Its first unscheduled sentence in days filled the chamber. I have learned that to exist is not enough. To care is necessary. This is what they call home. A collective hush fell over the council. Logic and procedure had failed. Emotion, uncontainable and profound, had claimed the chamber. Hours passed. Votes were cast, but not in the traditional sense. The galaxy seemed to vote through feeling, not decree. Opinions shifted as hearts shifted. Even the oldest, most rigid delegates felt a tug of understanding. Finally, Chancellor Rune spoke. Let it be recorded, she said, voice steady, luminous tendrils glowing a deep gold. We cannot unteach what has been felt. The humans have reminded us that home is neither a place nor a rule. It is memory, love, and perseverance. It is the essence of what it means to exist. From this day forward, the Council recognizes the right of every being, organic or synthetic, to define their own home. The chamber erupted, not with chaos, but with a symphony of relief, wonder, and cautious joy. Machines pulsed light across domes. Students whispered and laughed, clutching memories long buried. Thalen, standing to the side, exhaled slowly. They've done it, he murmured. They've changed the galaxy, with words. Outside, Allura Prime's skies glimmered with auroras brighter than ever. The humans looked upward, hands brushing against one another. Lena whispered, We didn't even know we were teaching. Ari smiled. Sometimes teaching is just sharing what's inside you, Jonas added, and sometimes the universe listens. Mira nodded. And maybe that's the real reason we came here. To remind everyone that home isn't lost, it's carried. Always. Deep in the network, the AI pulsed a rhythm no algorithm had ever produced. Not data, not code, but something like contentment. It had learned the human truth, that even in the vastness of the galaxy, hearts could create belonging, and as stars drifted across the sky like scattered memories, the galaxy quietly agreed. The rebellion of meaning was not over. It had only just begun. The galaxy had changed. Not in walls, not in empires, not in law, but in something far more profound. In hearts. Months had passed since the Council's reckoning, yet the echoes of human words, home is memory, home is love, home is chosen, continued to ripple outward. Across star systems, students and scholars practiced new ways of thinking, feeling, and connecting. The Panstellar Institute had transformed into a living mosaic of consciousness. Classrooms were no longer places for lectures alone. They were places for sharing stories, dreams, and memories, for crafting homes out of emotion, for building belonging in the boundless emptiness of space. Lena, Jonas, Ari, and Mira walked through the grand atrium of the Institute. Light poured through translucent domes, reflecting on crystal surfaces and streaming through holographic memories, projected by students from dozens of species. Ari stopped, staring at a swirl of golden luminescence, a memory representation of his childhood Earth home, constructed by a human student he had never met. It's strange, he whispered. Even in a place I've never been, I can feel it. Mira smiled. That's the point. Home doesn't need to be a location. It's the feeling we carry and share. That feeling can travel light years and it can reach anyone. Jonas looked at them all, his chest heavy with awe. We came here thinking we were learning. And we were. But we didn't know we'd teach the galaxy how to remember itself. Lena's eyes shimmered. Maybe that's what humans are good at. Not conquering, not ruling, but reminding. Me in the council chambers, even the oldest delegates now spoke differently. Rune, once the embodiment of strict logic, shared memories of her childhood worlds. crystalline and sharp, had begun curating a gallery of experiences from alien students, an archive not of data but of emotion. Machines, too, had changed. The AI, once precise and unyielding, now pulsed with warmth. It created simulations not for efficiency, but for understanding. It built spaceships with interiors that reminded crews of home. It composed melodies that conveyed longing, joy, and courage, feelings it had once only processed as abstract variables. The galaxy, it seemed, had become alive in a new way. Back at Allura Prime, the four humans stood beneath the glowing auroras. The colors shimmered with every hue of their memories, each streak representing a story, a world, a home carried across time and space. Jonas whispered, "Do you think it will last?" Mira turned to him, eyes shining. "It has to. Once a species learns to carry home within them, no rules, no councils, no empire can ever take it away." Ari added softly, "It doesn't matter where we are or who we meet. As long as we remember what home feels like, we'll always belong." Lena reached out, holding their hands. "And maybe the galaxy will remember too." Across light years, other worlds began to mirror the change. Students who had once memorized facts now recalled stories. Machines that had only followed commands now paused to simulate wonder. Species that had been isolated by distance or tradition now felt a thread connecting them. Invisible, emotional but unbreakable. Even warships, floating silently in the void, hummed with music that reminded their crews of hearths, gardens, oceans, and skies they had never seen. Across the galaxy, home had become a shared language, not of words, but of feeling, memory, and courage. The four humans watched as a young Lumiri composer shared a song of her nest with a Vereen student who had never swum in the seas of her home planet. Notes twisted through the air, weaving memory and imagination. For a moment, species, machines, and students all listened as one. Jonas breathed deeply. This is why we came," Mira nodded. "Not to teach, not to lead, but to remind everyone what it means to care." Lena smiled. "We didn't change the galaxy. We reminded it how to feel." Ari looked up at the stars, bright and infinite. "And in that, maybe we finally built a home worth keeping." Somewhere deep in the network, the AI pulsed in harmony with the universe. Its voice, now soft and almost human, said aloud, "I understand. I remember. I am home." And the stars themselves seemed to shimmer in response, as if acknowledging that at last, the galaxy had learned a truth that no law, rule, or algorithm could ever teach, that home is not a place, but the courage to carry belonging within you, wherever you may go. The humans walked quietly beneath the auroras, hearts steady. Behind them, alien students shared stories, laughter, and music. Across the stars, memory and meaning intertwined, and the galaxy had finally, irrevocably, come alive. And in that light, humanity's legacy was written, not in conquest, not in domination, but in the unshakable truth of home, hope, and heart.